The practice of medicine is an art, not a trade, a calling, not a business, a calling in which your heart will be exercised equally with your head. This quote by William Osler sums up our mission at the Lee Kong Chian School of Medicine to train future doctors capable of advancing the science and practice of medicine. The kind of doctors you and I would like to have caring for us and for our families. Guided by this ethos, we have designed a distinctive program here at LKCMedicine that leverages the strengths of our parent universities, Nanyang Technological University, Singapore, and Imperial College, London. Our award-winning MBBS curriculum is tailored to the future needs of Singapore and is delivered through innovative pedagogy in bespoke facilities across our dual-site campus. We believe that students learn best when they are actively engaged in the education process. Through our technology-enhanced, team-based learning approach, our students learn in small groups with materials and resources just a swipe away. They benefit from the extensive use of simulation to hone their skills in a safe setting. They learn the scientific basis of medicine in a way that enables them to apply their knowledge in the clinical setting. Anticipating the aging of our population and the rise in numbers of chronic diseases, we expose our students to patients in various clinical environments wherever healthcare is delivered from the first year of medical school. We want our students to put patients firmly at the heart of their learning. The future of medicine also lies in these laboratories. Just as LKCMedicine graduates will advance the practice of medicine, our distinguished faculty advances our understanding of key disease areas. Research faculty are embedded in the academic environment of NTU's Life Sciences Cluster, which combines biosciences with bioengineering, as well as in the clinical settings of the medical and healthcare complex known as Health City Novena, a development led by our primary clinical partner, the National Healthcare Group. Through collaborative research partnerships, we bring interdisciplinary experts together to prevent illness in the population and treat illness in our patients. We are defined by our resounding commitment to advance medical knowledge so as to improve the quality of life for everyone, and by our promise to educate skilled and caring doctors who will meet the challenges of tomorrow's healthcare. Since 2010, when LKCMedicine was formed, there has been a tremendous sense of momentum in our young medical school. We have been inspired by our students who have embraced their medical careers by exercising their hearts and their heads in the learning of medicine, prepared to contribute to the health of Singapore and the care of Singaporeans.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for taking time to join us today at the LKCMedicine Live Talk. I'm Associate Professor Tham Ying, Assistant Dean for Year 5. With me is Dr. Lee Chok Hon from the class of 2019 and my two students, Shusin and Waiter. I'm going to have Vice Dean Education, Professor Jennifer Cleland, to share her views about what the school is all about, and then we will take it back here on the live talk.
Hello, my name is Jennifer Cleland. I'm the Vice Dean of Education at LKCMedicine. I thank you for your interest in potentially applying to our school to be a medical student. At LKCMedicine, we have a world-class medical programme, a programme increasingly known for its innovation and its modern and student-centred pedagogy. Our MBBS is now 10 years old and we've graduated 5 cohorts of students who are now working in healthcare environments across Singapore. We're very proud of our graduates. Feedback from our healthcare partners confirms that LKCMedicine graduates are very well prepared for practice and move seamlessly from medical school into working as a doctor. In fact, several of our graduates have been recognised as outstanding, winning awards for their progress in PGY1 and as house officers. So how do we prepare students to become good doctors? We do so through our curriculum, our facilities, and the opportunities we give our students. So for the first of these, students learn from innovative student-focused pedagogic approaches, namely team-based learning, simulation-based education for many different core skills, including communication and clinical skills, and via apprenticeships for research and out in the wards. The programme is quality assured and informed by research into science, medicine and medical education. Students enjoy learning in a dual campus with modern facilities. So typically the first year students spend most time in the NTU campus over in Geelong. Teaching is carried out in the experimental medicine building. Being on campus really fosters getting to know other students who are doing other degrees, gives you a taste of campus-based life, that kind of really being immersed in a big world-class university. As the programme progresses, students spend more and more time here in Novena in our clinical sciences building, which is right across the road from TTSH, Tang Tok Seng Hospital, which belongs to our partner NHG. And again, as this degree progresses, there's less time spent on campus and more time spent in clinical environments doing workplace-based learning, the core, the heart of learning to be a doctor. But alongside the formal curriculum, we have lots of other opportunities. The first thing I'd like to mention briefly is our excellent support systems, notably the house tutor scheme. When you start at LKCMedicine, you're assigned a personal tutor and the same group of peers. And those peers and that tutor will work with you for the 5 years of the MBBS, offering pastoral care and helping you develop your skills of professionalism and lifelong learning. We also have a very vibrant student community. I don't have time to outline all the activities, but I will highlight student engagement with local and overseas community projects. So these focus on health education programmes, promotion and screening, and allow students to engage in supervised practice at an appropriate level and contribute to the wider community. And finally, and importantly, we support our students in other ways. Every student is eligible to attend and present research at local and international conferences. We have a conference budget for our students. We have a generous hardship fund, and we have excellent scholarship opportunities which contribute towards the cost of study for very many students. So thank you for your interest in LKCMedicine, and I hope to see you at some of our other events.
I hope the message from Professor Cleland has inspired you to want to know more about our MBBS program. I'm going to spend the next few minutes walking through an overview of our program and then talk a bit about admissions as well as application. After that, I'll hand my time over to Dr. Lee, who would share with you the life of a junior doctor after graduating from medical school, as well as to my two students, Shusin and Waiter, who will tell you about how maybe the pandemic has changed student life, as well as now coming back to preparing for DOSCON Green, which makes all of us very excited. Our school started in 2010, and if you follow the slide from the left-hand side all the way to the right. 2010 was landmark, of course, because that's where our collaboration with Imperial College London started. 2013 is the first intake of our students, and this was a class of 54 who then graduated in 2018. And if you bring your eyes towards the right side of the screen, in 2020, right in the middle of pandemic, we celebrated our 10th year. It was kind of a muted celebration, but nonetheless, quite an achievement for a very young medical school. 2023 is where we are now, and by next year, that means 2024, we would have again changed a little bit because we will have our MBBS program going independent. And if you have questions about that, please feel free to put the Slido, and then we will take the questions later. Our curriculum is first class because we were very fortunate that the collaboration with Imperial College London meant that we were able to have a very good start in get this off the ground. And that gave us a tremendous leg up in adapting what would have been very useful, certainly require adaptation to the local context. And that's where our clinical partner, the National Healthcare Group, came in very strongly. So the curriculum is not just something that we took lock, stock, and barrel, but literally adapted to what is relevant and important for Singapore. There is a very strong emphasis on basic sciences and how these sciences are actually applied to clinical medicine. We realized that we cannot possibly put the students for the first 2 years only on campus and never have them see and begin that journey of doctoring. And that's why we place a lot of emphasis on early contact with patients and with clinical faculty as well. So this slide shows a very brief 5-year overview of what happens. If you look towards the left column, we have year 1, year 2 shaded in purple, and that's where a lot of the knowledge foundation is laid during those early years. And then year 3, 4, and 5, our students, as Professor Cleland has said earlier on, will actually increasingly not be on campus, but in all the clinical settings, in the wards, in the hospitals, in the clinics. And the right-hand column is a summary of some of the key things that we bring our students through in order for them to pick up the skills necessary, not so much just as a medical student, but clearly as a doctor who need to join the workforce. In case you're wondering what's happening in the background picture, that's me with one of Chuck Horn's classmates, and this is ultrasound. If you are looking around and if you visited any doctors recently, ultrasound is going to become like the stethoscope of tomorrow. It is a wonderful tool. It doesn't cause any radiation, and it gives us a lot of great images of what is happening in the human body that we would not be able to see otherwise. So that is also one of those things that we are very proud to bring in to the year 1 and year 2 curriculum, using technology that is already available, that is highly affordable, to enhance our students' learning of anatomy. Looking at year 1, year 2 with a bit more details, and you can see the upper panel are all the systems. So yes, our school do not break the subject into what is taught in anatomy versus physiology versus biochemistry, which was my generation way of learning. And I had a lot of difficulty because what was taught in anatomy didn't necessarily gel with what was taught in physiology. And the integration together had to be left to the students to figure out. That's not quite right, because we can do it differently, and that's what LKCMedicine has chosen to do. We present the material in the form of systems. So cardiorespiratory means we talk about the typical symptoms that patients have in their heart or their lung system, how they actually would go and seek healthcare, seek consultation with a doctor. And from there, we talk about the basic science, which is the anatomy, the physiology, the pathology behind it. And that's how we present the systems for year 1 and year 2. It makes a much better way of learning because the human body is not divided by anatomy. The human body is much more logically seen in terms of the functioning systems, like what's happening in the heart will have implications for the lungs as well. So that's year 1 and year 2, where we integrate the science in the medical context. Then we go on to year 3. very, very foundational core clinical medicine in practice, and there is a lot of time spent in medical rotations in the wards and clinics, surgical rotations again in the ward and the clinic, and of course the operating theatre, and what we call the short postings. That means the students do go to dermatology, infectious diseases, ear, nose, throat, that's ENT, ophthalmology, that's eye, as well as anesthesia. And all these come together to form year 3, where a lot of the foundation is laid for not just year 3 itself, but year 4, year 5, and certainly for working life as a junior doctor. Year 4, we stretch the curriculum, and at the same time we stretch the students. The students get rotated to all the different clinical postings where they see pediatrics, that means the beginning of life, and geriatrics, which is the ending of life, and the real end of life, palliative medicine. They also get to see the extreme of setting, family medicine, very controlled, dealing with patients with long-term recurrent chronic illnesses, as well as emergency medicine, where life is very fast-paced. We don't know what the next patient coming in will present with what, and that is what year 4 is all about. Very exciting, a lot of diversity, and we start year 4 with a scholarly project. In other words, every student at the beginning of year 4 will have a tutor, a supervisor assigned to them, and one project of their own in order for them to walk the journey of what it means to engage in scientific work and scientific research. Year 5 is what I'm in charge of, and our sole purpose is to make sure that by now, which is the final year before they graduate, the students are really ready for work. So they start the year with an overseas elective, and I'll speak a little bit more because Professor Cleland has referred to it earlier. They also will have 2 major chunks of clinical postings that will return them to the wards, to the clinics, to prepare them for the exams. And our exams are conducted in January, and those who are successful will then finish up with the student assistantship program. And this has been one of the highlights of our 5-year MBBS program, because the students who go through student assistantship program come out so much better for the beginning of their working life as a junior doctor. This is the capstone program, and we are very proud that it is something that other schools are looking towards us to try and do something similar for their students. So it's not so much about how we teach, and we all realize by now it's actually how do students learn. Because what I teach, the students may not learn. But what the students learn, they not only will learn it well in medical school, they will carry the technique of it into their working life. And for a medical career, lifelong learning is definitely part and parcel of what we need to do. So there's a lot of material that is really digitalized, and that is the future. We all know by now that there's no point going to a bookstore to buy books when, with a few clicks of the button, the e-books and the e-resources are actually so much more powerful and up-to-date. We use a lot of team-based learning, and that's very critical, because when we work as doctors, there is no such thing as a one-man show or a one-man operation. When I did my shift yesterday in the emergency department, I lead the team comprising junior doctors, mid-grade doctors, my nurses, and of course, as a team, we deliver much better care. So team-based learning gives our students the chance to learn how to be an effective team leader as well as a team member. So it has got a lot more benefits than just as a way of learning within the medical school. We spend a lot of time making sure that our students can communicate, because one of the core things in medicine is the ability to share information and retrieve information. So that's why the emphasis on communication skills. Anatomy, of course, has to be taught, otherwise that's not a proper medical school. And we have referred to already early patient contact, where our year 1 students would actually spend a hospital week and a polyclinic week. And I still am amazed how deep those impressions will carry in our students' hearts and minds after a very, very eventful and impactful hospital week and polyclinic week. And the other parts of year 1, year 2 has got all the science practicals, analyzing data, because of the science practicals that were conducted somewhat like experiments, as well as the project opportunities available to students as well. We have a lot of clinical partners. While NHG may be our primary partner, the truth is Singapore really, for all the healthcare institutions, they welcome our students with open arms. So you can see on the left half of the slides, all the other hospitals that work closely with our school in order to enhance our students' learning opportunities. We meet up with the school leader, the hospital leadership every year to make sure that there is a feedback channel that is open for both sides. And every year we aim to do even better in terms of the learning experience for our students and how they will turn out as junior doctors. Student opportunities start, of course, excitedly with the exchange possibilities with Imperial. So some of our year 2 students would actually travel to Imperial for a one-week exchange program in March during one of their vacation weeks. And of course, by year 5, easily 40% of our year 5 students would opt to do an elective within the huge healthcare trust that's based in London, that is part of the Imperial Trust. And many of them come back with fantastic feedback because London is a very nice place to visit. And of course, the healthcare system there is very different. And so these are great opportunities because of our collaboration with Imperial. Imperial isn't the only destination for our students' elective. If you look at all the purple pins across the whole map of the world, many other places, universities and hospitals have received our students and hosted them as elective students. So the compilation of their stories and the opportunities given is tremendous. And we're all very happy that after 2020 and 2021, when our students couldn't travel, our students have actually resumed elective in 2022, and it is exciting in the post-pandemic world that this will continue. And of course, the opportunities will be even more so now that Singapore has moved towards DORSCON Green and traveling opportunities are definitely back to normal. So this picture with our students not wearing our purple scrub is because they are all in Imperial, and Imperial has been very kind to arrange for scrubs to be available for our students. So this is the 2022 class over at Imperial doing the welcome, the orientation, and you can see the feedback given by the students about the great learning opportunity given to all of them while they were there spending 6 weeks on their electives. The rest of UK, like University of Oxford, okay, and some of the other Midlands universities as well. And again, it's kind of difficult not to show the students looking like tourists. And that's not because they spend all their time having fun. It's because within the hospital where they do the electives, all of us, and definitely our students, are very aware that taking photographs may not always be a good idea because it can compromise patients' privacy and confidentiality. And that's why the pictures we show are them in the classrooms and looking like tourists like this. This is one of the very good programs that is offered by an institution in Taiwan. The students actually will be brought through a lot of hands-on experience in the simulation laboratory first before being allowed into the operating theatre. So you can see that in this particular situation, the patient's face as well as the anatomy are all blurred out in order for us to take a shot like this. Some more pictures, and this is especially in some of the other countries where healthcare system is not as advanced or developed as Singapore, our students also have plenty of things to learn because it's a different spectrum of diseases, as well as the opportunities to work with doctors and nurses there who may not have the kind of resources that we have in Singapore. It is a very precious lesson for our students, very humbling, and they come back really understanding and appreciating the wealth and the affluence that we have in our system and how well our system has been set up. Professor Cleland earlier on already referred to some of our outstanding alumni, and here are 3 of them. Rachel and Stewart are from the class of 2018, Wheelin from the class of 2019, and they have gone on to win teaching awards. And Elsa from the class of 2020, and she actually won the National Outstanding PGY1 Award. And national means that this is actually an award given by the Ministry of Health. So let me now switch track a little bit to talk about admission to our school. And I do need to emphasize that this current deck of slides and the material refers to the 2023 intake. In other words, for those of you who are intending to put in an application for the matriculation this year, which will take place in the June-July period, this information is relevant to you. For those who are intending to apply to the 2024 intake, things would have changed, and when I come to it, I will refer and point it out. So these are the steps, starting, of course, with the biomedical admissions test, that's BMAT, which you would have set for last year in 2022. Usually is conducted in the October-November period. So BMAT is absolutely necessary for the 2023 intake. Then when the online admissions application portal opens, okay, please put in your application. Step 3, we will look through all applications and begin the shortlisting for the interviews. We call the interviews MMI, and I'll talk about that a bit later. And the selection interviews, MMI, in other words, will take place in April 23 this year. About a month later, by early May to June, we will be sending out offer letters, and hopefully those that we send the offer letters to, we will receive the acceptance of our offers. Those who have accepted will then start the health screening. This is mandated by Ministry of Health for some of the vaccination, like hepatitis B, for example. And once the health screening is over and done with, students prepare for matriculation, which will take place in July. And by late July, early August, the academic year will start and lessons will start for our students. So application period, I'm going to keep quiet and let you look at the slides because you know better which category you belong to. So this is the beginning of the application period, the moment your qualifying high school results or A-level results are available. What is the minimum academic requirement? That's a very common question. Again, I'm not going to read through all those words on the text. I'm just going to keep quiet for a short while and let you take a look at it. This is another slide that's very exciting because inevitably we get asked, how many marks do I need to score for BMAT to qualify for LKCMedicine? The honest truth is, these numbers that you see are indicative numbers. In other words, they are not cast in stone. BMAT is a test that looks at that entire cohort of test takers and their performance. So if the test for that year is particularly difficult, and most of the test takers do not score so well, then the indicative scores that gets accepted for interview by LKCMedicine will also be lower. But if that cohort of test takers are very, very good, or they find that the particular test is very easy, then the scores will go up. And that's why we state very clearly, these are indicative scores. It doesn't mean that it will apply for 2023, even though these were the scores last year's. We go on to talk about, again, a question that gets asked. In addition to academic performance, are there alternative routes to come in? The answer is yes. We call this the aptitude-based admission, and these are the applicants with exceptional talent or outstanding achievement. So we are talking about national sportsmen, so national badminton player, national water polo player, national hockey player, national fencer. So these are the kind of applicants that would qualify for aptitude-based admission. And of course, the other example are the winners at the International Olympiads or the National Science and Talent Search or equivalent. So yes, if you are somebody in this category, then please do consider coming through the aptitude-based admissions if you are checking in about alternatives. So after the application is received, we will then be sorting through all the applications and we will shortlist those who will receive an invitation to come forward for our multiple mini interviews. And the term is very illustrative. Multiple means each candidate who comes in for the interview goes through 8 stations, so multiple. Mini because each station is very short duration, about 5 minutes, with 2 minutes outside the room for the reading of what is about to come in the interview, 5 minutes in the room with the interviewer, and every interviewee will complete a circuit of 8 stations, and then we will put the scores together. Those who are successful, we will send an offer letter, and once the student accepts the offer, then the next stage is where all the technical things about matriculation and school fees will come in. And here on the slide, you can see that last year's, so this is AY 2022, tuition fees for Singapore citizens, permanent residents, and for the international students. The fees are expensive. Medical school across the world is expensive. So we do know that some students need a little bit more help. So for the students who are academically doing very well, there are scholarships. Those who may not qualify for a scholarship but do need financial help, there are definitely bursaries as well as tuition fee loans that comes in with a very low interest rate. So what are the kind of scholarships that we have? We have the LKCMedicine, we have the ASEAN undergraduate, the Toh Kian Chui, and the Sim Yong Chong, as well as the Irene Tan. The scholarship qualification, or the qualifying criteria are slightly different. When we say SC, that means that the applicant must be a Singapore citizen. Okay, SPR means permanent resident, and the ASEAN scholarship does encourage the permanent resident to apply or the international candidate to apply. And of the rest, you can see the combination of citizenship makes some differences. And what does the last column needs-based means? Meaning that between two candidates who qualify equally for the Toh Kian Chui scholarship, the student whose family has got a little bit more financial difficulty or is a little bit more challenged in terms of financial status will actually be given the scholarship if there is such a competition. But most of the time, we have more than enough scholarships to go around for the deserving candidates. Next, the bursaries. We have a lot of bursaries available, and bursaries are given as grants to help the student through the medical school. They come in different quantity in terms of the amount level and slightly different conditions. If you are interested, the QR code is there, so please do scan it and you can find out more information. And of course, from DBS and OCBC, the loans from these two banks are extremely generous in terms of the amount given as well as the interest that is very, very low. And the student does not need to start paying until they graduate and actually draws the first salary. Here are all the LKCMedicine brochures. Again, if you scan the QR code with your mobile device, you can download any of them. It is a much greener way of sharing information for you to find out a little bit more about our school, our faculty, our facilities, and save the earth. Now I'm going to hand the time over to my two students, Shusin, who is my Year 4 student, and Weiter, who is my Year 3 student. So over to the two of you.
Good morning, everybody. And once again, welcome to LKCMedicine's virtual open house. I'm from the Year 3 batch, and my name is Weiter.
My name is Shusin, and I'm from the Year 4 batch. And today we'll be sharing a little bit more about student life here at LKC.
So first up, I would like to bring you through our learning journey. So in the preclinical years, which basically means in your Year 1 and Year 2, most of our lessons will take place via team-based learning. And as part of TBL, we will have 3 components. The first is the individual readiness assessment, where you'll be completing a quiz individually. Afterwards, in the team readiness assessment, you will be discussing the questions that you've just completed as a team. Following which, we will then have our application exercises, where you get to apply your knowledge to real-life scenarios. So for instance, the questions will present to you like a certain patient with a condition, and then they will ask you, how should we best treat the patient? So I would describe TBL as collaborative, engaging, as well as very enriching. During my time in M1, because of the COVID restrictions, we had our TBL sessions over Zoom. However, with the easing of COVID restrictions, you get to look forward to meeting your team in real life in the learning studio, especially in the experimental building and our clinical science building. So as mentioned by Prof. Tham earlier, our learning is very self-directed with the learning materials uploaded before HTBL, and our curriculum is arranged by systems. One thing I can attest to is that our professors are very approachable and helpful. In fact, we regularly take pictures with them all the time. So this is a picture of me waiting for the 5:30 PM bus back to hall with Prof ready. We also have the opportunity to learn things out of our syllabus free of charge. So for me, I picked up Malay and Hokkien language. So this self-directed learning means that there's more time for individual exploration, especially when you're in your year 1 and year 2. I spend a lot of my time keeping fit in the gym, as well as trying out a new sport such as hockey in hall. Over here at LKC, you will also be sorted into houses, and I managed to visit my house tutor's house for an art session. In M1, we will also get early exposure to the wider healthcare community through hospital and polyclinic weeks. So for my hospital week, I went to Ang Mo Kio Tai Hwa Kwan Hospital, and I was together with the rehabilitation team, where we got to try out many walking aids, such as these wheelchairs that my team are on. Yeah. I also went to Outram Polyclinic. Over there, we actually talked to many patients, and they shared their challenges coming to the healthcare system. So it could be perhaps long wait times, or some of them have certain financial issues. So these challenges actually left a very great impression on me. And because you don't have lessons during those 2 weeks, yeah, my team actually went for a quick stop at Universal Studio. Yeah.
So moving on to the anatomy learning in LKC, so personally I felt that having plastinated specimens as well as an anatomage table actually made a lot of difference to my learning. So it helps a lot, especially when anatomy is very abstract and very hard to visualize. So having the specimens up close and being able to see the details like the vessels as well as the nerves and how it travels actually makes a lot of difference. We also have 3D plastic models, and there's a lot of focus on histology and pathology as well. And we also have practical lab sessions in the year 1 and year 2. So some of the interesting things that we got to do was visualize the conception of a chicken embryo. So as you can see in the left 2 pictures, it's a very close-up picture of an embryo. And that's us on the right in our PPE. So other things that we do in the practical lab sessions include ultrasounds, as Prof. Tham mentioned earlier. So this actually helps a lot when we eventually progress to the clinical years, as everything becomes a lot less unfamiliar. And clinical skills is one thing that we start early. So in year 1 and year 2, we focus mainly on history taking, physical examination, as well as simple practical skills. So in terms of history taking, we focus more on communication towards the start, and towards the end of M2, we move towards focusing on content as well as getting the right questions out during histories. And physical examination, the way we learn it is that we learn what a normal physical examination should look like in year 1 and year 2, and we focus on getting the steps right and being confident in our skills. And this helps a lot, especially when we progress to the wards in year 3, when we start examining patients. And some of the practical skills that we start learning in the earlier years are simple things like taking bloods as well as setting IV plugs on rubber models. So even though it's not like real life, it helps to build confidence in terms of getting the skills and the right techniques. So next, moving on to the clinical years, I think for most of us, it's quite a big jump from M2 to M3. So starting clinical years is very, very daunting, but it helps when you have a team with you to experience the journey together. So some of the things that we do in clinical years that are very different from M1 and M2 are being in the hospital setting, where you're sort of part of a much larger system, and you sometimes don't really know what you're supposed to do. So this is a bit of an outline. So we join ward rounds, we join clinics, sometimes we get to watch OTs, and we have tutorials with the doctors, and we sometimes are able to practice procedures. So on the right side of the corner is actually us watching an OT, a vascular OT, where there was radiological, I think it was like X-rays. Yeah. And so we had to wear the lead suits and everything. And one thing that is important in the clinical years for me was the SimTech. So SimTech is actually a simulation tutorial where there's a simulated patient on the bed. So it's the bottom photo. You can see that there's a simulated patient, and behind the wall, actually a doctor is over there giving us instructions. So we can take a history from the patient. The patient itself can change blood pressure, can change heart rate, can also sweat. So for us, it allows us to practice examining, allows us to practice our approach to a patient, especially when there's not a lot of guidance. So this helps a lot. Next, as Prof. Tham mentioned, there's quite a lot of overseas experiences. So in year 5, there's an overseas electives, which I personally haven't gone for, but I've started to plan. And I think the great thing about this is that you can actually go to anywhere in the world that you want to, and you can organize it yourself. So I think this gives me a lot of autonomy, as well as a lot of freedom to plan what I want to learn. So we can choose specific specialties that we want to be attached to, as well as different settings, different hospitals. So for example, I have some friends who are more interested in rural medicine. So, and some of them are going to areas like Christian Medical College in India, and some of my other friends are going to Imperial College as well. Personally, I'm looking for an elective in Canada, but we'll see how it goes. So one other thing is in year 1 and year 2, we have overseas CIP programs. So the pictures at the bottom are me in Nepal. So I was with Project Asha, and we are a project that goes to Nepal. So on the left side, we were at the blind school where we conducted events with blind school students. And so it was actually quite interesting because it was a partnership with SIT. So we had physiotherapy students who actually conducted activities with the blind school students, and it was very interesting for us. And on the right side, we were at a eye hospital, I think. So we managed to watch cataract surgeries being done in Nepal, and it was very, very interesting. For me, that was before we started clinical years, and watching it very up close and watching them conduct and finish a cataract surgery within 2 minutes was very amazing. Okay, moving on to research culture.
So over here at LKC, we also have a very strong research network with passionate mentors willing to guide us. In fact, last year, I had the privilege of working in Prof. Winxia's lab, where we grew stem cells into mini kidneys. She uses these mini kidneys for things such as drug testing, and so I do think that we have a very excellent research support network if you ever want to do it. Every student will get a chance to embark on a research project during their scholarly project in M4, so that's something you can look forward to. So I had the opportunity to present my poster at LKCMedicine's research symposium, where they actually printed out my poster, which is something that I'm very grateful for. Yeah. So now we'll be taking you through our LKCMedicine family.
Okay, so first I'll talk a little bit about the house system. So for me, I'm from Wu Lian Tay House. So there's 5 houses, and I'm in the black house. So I think what makes a lot of difference in school is when you have a strong community support system. As medical school is very difficult, and having people around you who you trust and know you actually helps a lot, especially when you end up in different postings in the clinical years. So on the left is us at EMB. So I think it was Halloween, and we sort of impromptu decided to dress up for TBL. And on the top left, actually, so Wu Lian Tay is named after a doctor from Penang. So we managed to go to Penang during one of our holidays and take a picture with the sign that says Taman Wu Lian Tay. So it's a street named after him. And so there's also a lot of events in school that are actually organized by LKC MedSoc. So some of these events are First Class, which is actually a program that allows anyone with any skill to teach anyone in school. So I think what this allows is for people to showcase their talents that are separate from medicine, as well as let people just meet other people through learning a new skill. And PB&J is a arts and culture performance. So actually it's being held today here in CSB. So anyone with any arts interests, so for example, singing, dancing, I think even magic shows have been done on PB&J before, and it's completely free, and it's a stage where anyone can showcase their talents. Yeah, and lastly, we also have D&D. So on the bottom left was D&D, which I managed to attend. So because of COVID, many of these D&D sessions were cancelled. Usually it's an important event for the M1s, but for me, I did it when I was in M4. So that's a few of us from our batch. Yeah, so I think D&D is very nice because after being in school for so long, it's nice to be able to get together with your friends, have some good food, enjoy some live performances by the students, and just relax lah. Yeah. Okay.
So another event that you can look forward to is Run It Forward, which is LKCMedicine's annual charity virtual run. As long as you clock a distance of above 300 kilometers in a team of 4 within 2 months, you get to win yourself a medal. So on the left is a picture of me flagging off Run It Forward 2021, and then on the right, it is a picture of me and my team. We called ourselves the Way Forward because all of us contain a way in our names, yeah. And so we actually hiked from NTU to MBS. Yeah. So I'd like to share a bit more about the local community involvement programs that you get to immerse yourselves into over here at LKC Medicine. So last year, I was part of NHG LKC ComHealth's planning committee, and we planned 2 events. The first was paranursing, where we actually went down to Tan Tock Seng Hospital to lend our nurses a helping hand during the peak of the COVID period. So I remember myself feeding patients or helping the nurses to collect their medications. The second of which was elderly engagement at Toa Payoh's Care Corner, where we played a lot of games with the elderly as well as did certain exercises with them. I also participated in Camp Simba, which brings together children with cancer-afflicted family members to forge lasting friendships. Yep, so here are pictures of us having fun. Yeah, so Camp Simba is also jointly organized by NUS students, so you also get to expose yourselves to NUS students. Yeah. So do look forward to many more of our LCIPs over here in LKC.
So lastly, we'd just like to share a little bit more about how we play into the larger NTU community. So in the year 1 and year 2, we have an option to stay in hall, and we're actually located in the same 2 halls right next to each other, so it's Crescent and Pioneer. So this helps a lot, especially when our school timings and school schedule is quite different from the rest of the NTU community. So the picture on the bottom left, is us at the canteen having dinner together after TVL. So I was also, I was also part of 2 NTU CCAs, so I have an interest in dance. So I was in NTU Soul Funky, which does popping and locking, as well as NTU MJ, which is urban dance, hip hop, and other styles as well. So I had the chance to put up a performance, choreograph as well as dance in multiple performances for NTU and meet other people from other courses. So I think this actually allowed me to see and meet other people who weren't only studying medicine, as our life tends to be quite a lot different from them. So hearing about their problems and the way that school works for them was quite interesting. And it also allowed me to just get a broader perspective of what school is like for everyone else. So we also have inter-school games as well as inter-house games here in NTU, which Rita will share more about.
Yeah, so I managed to participate in the inter-school games both this year and last year. So last year, these are a few pictures of us actually playing captain's ball. So we would like to conclude our sharing by actually just sharing a picture of the LKC Medicine batch of 2025. So today, Shu Xin and I had the opportunity to tell you our story, but I'm curious to know, how would your story in LKC Medicine go?
Thank you.
So thank you, Weta and Susin. I'm going to hand the time now over to Dr. Lee Chok Hon, who is actually at this moment working in the same hospital as me. So Chok Hon, over to you to share about your life thus far after medical school.
Thanks, Prof. Hi, morning everybody joining us online. I'm Chok Hon, one of the graduates from LKC Medicine. I graduated in 2019, so I'm actually PGY 4 right now. And if you count back the years, I actually joined LKC in 2014. So as much as I would like to reminisce the great times that I had as a student, I think some of you might be wondering what happens afterwards in terms of how does everything tie all together, how does all the skills and all the knowledge that you have learned in medical school come together and create a functioning doctor that is able to operate in the wards, that's able to see patients, that's able to attend to them, attend to their needs, attend to the family's needs, as well as work under senior doctors who have a lot of knowledge, a lot of experience, and may sometimes come across as a bit overroaring. Yeah. So I think first of all, the most important skill of a doctor is the communication skills, being able to relate to the patient, being able to find out exactly what's going on, being able to help them after you have found out what's going on. And something that LKC prides itself in, and I personally benefit a lot from, was the strong attention to bring out these communication skills in us from the very beginning of medical school, from year 1. So what I'm referring to is what we call ICP, or Integrated Clinical Practice, where year 1 students get to speak to simulated patients in a very safe, very controlled environment, witnessed by their team members, witnessed by their tutors. And the question that you need to ask yourself is, how do you approach a patient? Because if you think about it, you currently, most of the applicants will be post-JC, post-polytechnic graduates. How do you begin to initiate that conversation in the first place? How do you approach a patient? How do you show your mannerisms in a way that come across as respectful, as empathetic? And these are things that you don't really think about until you are put in the hot seat, and then suddenly you realize, oh wait, I shouldn't be putting my hand here, I shouldn't be putting my leg there, I should be standing up, I should be shaking the hand, I should be sitting down. And all these things are fine-tuned and trained in a very controlled space from the very beginning. So while the applicants to LKC Medicine or any medical school, the initial students, they come in with a lot of heart, but they don't have that skill yet, they don't have that polished finesse yet. And this is what we aim to train you in the 5 years of medical school to attain at the end by the time you graduate. And something that Prof. Tham mentioned during her previous one of the slides was that LKC Medicine prides itself in using technology, using ultrasound to teach our students anatomy and how to use that in a clinical scenario. And something that I actually use quite often in my practice, not just in the emergency department, but also even in the wards, is let me pose you this question. Have you ever had the experience of blood taking where the nurse or the doctor just couldn't seem to find the vein? Just couldn't, just tried, and you just got poked so many times that you lost count. And so ultrasound is one of those bedside techniques or procedures that you can actually use in the wards, and they actually have been rolling out to wards all over Singapore, where doctors can actually use ultrasound to identify difficult veins and actually obtain the blood or set a cannula for delivery of IV medications. So this is something that I personally use, and I've lost count of how many times I've used it in the wards already. And I'm actually very grateful to Prof. Tham as well as all our tutors for teaching me that skill and for me being able to apply that in the ward. Because if we just leave the ultrasound machine in the ward, nobody's going to use it unless you actually have that training beforehand. And secondly is, other than communication with the patient, it's also about communication with the team. You work with doctors who are more senior than you, and at my stage, I'm also working with doctors who are more junior than me, doctors who have just graduated from medical school. You also work with nurses, you work with physiotherapists, occupational therapists, the whole allied health community comes together. And the question is, how do you put your views across in a way that's respectful, that also puts the center of everything that you do? And at the same time, some of us make mistakes, and it's inevitable that we make mistakes. So the question is, how do you provide that feedback to each other so that you can advance the interest of the patient as well as advance the skill level of the team as a whole? For example, if you were to give feedback to your senior doctor for making a small mistake in something, how do you go about doing that? If you were to be put in the same scenario, giving feedback to a junior doctor or your medical student under you, how do you go about doing that? Or maybe even your peer, or maybe a nurse that just happened to maybe forget to serve a medication or forgot to do something for the patient. So how do you come across in a way that doesn't demean or derogate your colleague, but at the same time make sure that you take care of the patient's safety at all times? So these are skills that you build up throughout your years in medical school, not just in team-based learning, but also in ICP, when you get to give feedback to your colleagues after you have witnessed their consultation. And the last thing that I would like to say is with regards to SAP, or the Student Assistantship Program. I feel that a lot of the skills or the things that I do right now in my practice in the wards actually comes from that short 2 months of bringing everything together, because after MBBS exams, you have all the theory, all the theoretical knowledge. You have somewhat of a practical knowledge in terms of how you want to examine patients, what are the right questions to ask a patient, what are the key things that you're looking out for to obtain a diagnosis. But at the same time, you don't know how to function as a working doctor in the wards. And that's something that transits you from a student to a doctor. The SAP program is something that allows you to experience life without the stress of having exams looming over you. So you focus purely on looking after the patient, doing your best to do what's necessary to help the patient, speak to the families, and function in general as a junior doctor. While not having that license yet to practice, you are still adequately supervised, but that safe space is given to you, and ultimately, I think all we want is for our students to have that safe space to explore their own boundaries, to see what they can and they cannot do before they even go out into the wards as a fully functional and fully licensed practitioner. So these are my takeaways from LKC Medicine. There's a lot more other than all these, but I think we'll cut that short for now, and then we'll move on to the Q&A session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chok Hon. Thank you. And I am very grateful that quite a number of questions have already come through. So we will probably start the Q&A, which I think is highly anticipated. So the first question that is shown is about the admission process. I think I've already covered that. So briefly, if you are looking at the 2023 intake, you should have set for your BMAT last year, and then go to the online application portal, put in your application. When we receive all the application, we will sort it out, and we will begin sending out the invitation for the selected, shortlisted candidates to come forward for the multiple mini interview that will take place in April 2023. After the MMI, again, another session, some weeks for us to rank and sort, and then after that, we will be sending out the letters of offer. Those who accept our offer will begin the health screening and the matriculation process from June onwards, because the academic year will start in late July or early August of 2023. So that's briefly the admission process. I'm going to the next one. The question is, what are certain things I should have prepared for the application and interview? Is it mandatory to have work experience while in JC or after? Maybe I'll hand this question to my two students and share a little bit about your post-A-level experience before you get to medical school. Okay, Susan and Waiter, over to you.
Okay, as for my post-A-level experience after JC, right? Okay, I'm very sorry, I did not have much to say because like I entered army 1 month afterwards. Yeah, then afterwards, I spent 1.5 years in the army before disrupting for medical school.
I think for me, I graduated from JC in 2018, and then it was a 9-month break. So I think I went for one like hospital attachment, but it's quite difficult to get attached to doctors as a JC student. So I followed a physiotherapist for a day. So that was quite interesting for me also. I think I was in Kutik Puat, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, so I don't think work experience and attachments are necessary at all. So I was actually doing an internship in something completely unrelated, so just to explore my options. But I think it does help in getting you a better sense of whether this is the kind of setting that you want to work in. And also, like, I think take your time to figure out what it is that you like about medicine, so you can be sure that this is truly the path that you want to take. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just wanted to add on. So actually, we tried not to think so much about making this a portfolio kind of boosting exercise. At the same time, the most important thing or takeaway, if you want to go for a work experience after JC, is to get a feel of what is life all about as a doctor. Okay, this is a lifelong commitment you're signing up for. It's not something that you should take lightly. If you want to experience what you would do as a junior doctor or as a senior doctor after graduation, then by all means go ahead. Rest assured, if you don't have that experience under your belt, it's not going to disadvantage you in terms of admission or application, but it may disadvantage you if you have not thought through that reasons why you want to join medicine in the first place. Personally, I went for a short attachment to Tan Tock Seng General Surgery. I got to witness what surgery was like, how the senior surgeons actually ran their rounds or even had tumor boards or did clinics to see patients, and how they broke bad news to patients who had cancer. So that all in all was a very eye-opening experience for me, and that patient contact that I witnessed between the doctor and the patient, that was something that was very sacred that I got to see as an attached student, and that in itself actually drove me to apply for medicine. So I think it depends on what you value as a person, whether you want to see that in real life before you commit to it, or whether you are fine, you really know what you want and you can just go for it. Yeah.
So thank you for the sharing, and I just want to share a story of an interviewee, that up till now has really impressed me. And as a faculty member with LKCMedicine, I've done hundreds of interviews since the very beginning. So this particular young lady came from a family that was financially a little bit challenged. So her family needed her to work and bring help with a little bit with the income after her A-levels. She was interested in medicine, even though that wasn't the only option she was considering. And she felt that if she could have some kind of work experience in a hospital, that would be very good. But of course, all the typical clinical attachment doesn't come with any kind of stipend or income at all. So in the newspapers, she saw that one of the hospitals was looking for temporary helpers with the mortuary service. If you are not familiar, the mortuary service is that team that would actually go to the patient's bedside where after this patient has passed away and bring this person down to the mortuary to finish all the last matters, the official matters, and then allow the family or the undertaker to come forward and take things to the next stage. So she signed up for that to earn a little income, and when we were going through the interview, she was in my station for the MMI. Her sharing was very reflective. She saw healthcare from a very different angle, not with doctors and nurses, but as part of the mortuary team, and the professionalism displayed by the mortuary team, her buddies, they're all uncles and aunties, okay, but they took her on board. They shared with her the things that they have realized and learned, and how to continue to be very respectful and professional, regardless of the circumstances surrounding that dead patient's clinical matters. That was one interviewee that I was very, very impressed with. And that's why after all these years, I still remember her story, and I feel very, very proud to be able to share that here in Singapore, we do have fantastic young people with that kind of humility and really the right kind of attitude to come into medicine. So could she tell me about what the operating theatre looked like? No, she couldn't. She could tell me a lot about what the mortuary looked like, but that wasn't exactly. But you know, the whole attitude, the learning, and being creative in making sure that she could still help her family and do something worthwhile with that time. So I hope that's a nice little inspirational story. Let me move on to the next question about the criteria that we use for selecting students. So I think by now you've heard BMAT is important. You have to come in with good scores, and that is always very dependent on the cohort of test takers. We will then select and invite you to come forward for multiple mini interviews. The MMI, each station will be given a score, and so your performance will determine that score. We will then collate the score, and again, the shortlisting will happen, and we will send the offer letters to those who are shortlisted after a successful MMI. Next, about financial aid availability. I think we've really gone through this. If you're academically very good, please consider putting in an application for the scholarship as you apply to the medical school. if you feel that, maybe your academic performance is not at that kind of level, but you still need consideration for aid, then there are really quite a lot of bursaries that are available, as well as a very low interest student loan from the 2 banks that I've spoken about. All this information is available on one of the QR codes for you to read at your own leisure. Where is the LKC Medicine campus? I'm going to get my 2 students to share with you because they have experienced both campuses.
All right, so the LKC Medicine campus, right, it's a dual campus system. So we have the experimental medicine building over at the NTU main campus, which is the nearest MRT station will be Pioneer MRT. So it's all the way in the west. And then afterwards, we also have our clinical science building, which is over here in Novena, where we are at now. There's an inter-campus shuttle bus running quite frequently on Mondays to Fridays. And I mean, like, it's quite convenient. Yeah, it's free of charge also.
In case you're wondering, the hostels are all located over at the Yunnan campus, which is the Jurong side. We do not have hostel facility over here at the Novena campus. Let me move on to the next question, which is how many students will LKC Medicine admit this year? What is ideal and what is asked of us are 2 different matters. So in our school, we know that a class size of about 150 actually is a very sweet spot. A class that's big enough for a lot of the network and the friendship building among the students, but not so big that the students get lost and the faculty does not have time or the ability to get to know all of them. So therefore, 150 is, in our school's understanding, a very nice number. But a number of students per intake for a medical school is never determined by the school alone. So Ministry of Health will have consultation with us, and the final decision usually will be announced a little bit later. So for the past 2, if not 3 years, due to the pandemic situation, our enrollment has gone up to 168 per year. So for 2023, we do not know yet, but it is very likely to be at the 150 to 168 kind of range. Let me move on to the next question, which is what sort of research are there available in LKC Medicine? Let's take that first, and then the second part about the scholarly project, we will discuss that later. So maybe I hand the time to Waiter.
All right, so LKC Medicine students will definitely undertake a 6-week scholarly project when they start year 4. So the aim of the scholarly project is to enhance students' understanding of a focus area of research scholarship lah. Okay, so for me personally, in year 1, I actually had the chance to go to do my house tutor's research, which was on neurology. And basically, he does a lot of immunostaining of zebra fishes. So he stains a lot of the proteins in order to better understand how neurons work. And then in year 2, I actually went over to Prof. Yun Xia's lab, where she grows stem cells into mini kidneys. And so what I actually did was that I knocked out a gene in the stem cell, and then we grew mini kidneys through them. And then we realized that this gene is actually responsible for producing kidney cysts. So do look forward to many laboratory research over here in LKC Medicine. And over in the clinical years, you can also approach any doctor if you're interested in research to just consult them and see if they have any opportunities available for you.
Maybe I'll invite Shu Xin to talk a bit about your scholarly project that you finished in year 4.
Okay, so in year 4 at the start, we start with the scholarly project. So there's a lot of different projects that you can embark on. There's 150 of us in our batch, and there's 150 plus projects that you choose from. So you actually ballot to pick your project. So there's different types. There's projects that are more lab focused, like the one that Waiter did, but there's also quite clinical things, and some involve data collection. So the one that I did was actually an epidemiological study at the with regards to cancer genetics in ovarian cancers. So we were looking at patients, we were looking at the data. For me, it was easier because the data was already collected for me and I just had to analyze it. But even then, it was many patients with many different confounding factors, demographics, and things to consider. So for me, it was very interesting to be able to put into practice like these practical things that you learn in theory and to see how it plays out in real life and see the sort of things that you can study to find out more about a specific disease or condition.
Thank you very much. And I'm going to now switch track to this question, which clearly I would require Chak Hon's help to answer. What are some negative aspects of being a doctor that applicants should consider before applying? I'm not going to prejudice Chak Hon, so I'm going to give Chak Hon the time first.
Okay, so this is the meat, right? This is the bomb question that everyone wants to know. So I'm going to be very honest because we want students to come in with their eyes open. And first of all, you must understand that medicine is a calling and it's a career that is lifelong. So sacrifices are definitely going to be required of you at some point. In medical school, you don't really get a feel of this because everything is quite protected. If you have any concerns, anyone that say something a bit mean to you, you can always consult your seniors, your house tutors. There's a lot of safety nets there involved. But the moment you graduate, you are thrown out into the working world. And the working world of medicine is not too dissimilar from the working world outside of medicine, in the sense that you're going to have to face problems with scheduling, problems with clashes between your social life as well as your working life. You're going to face conflicts at the workplace between your seniors, your juniors, even with your peers. And some of the so-called negative aspects of being a doctor is actually mainly the sacrifices that you have to make time for your patients over your family or maybe your friends. So for example, during public holidays, you may need to do 24-hour shifts. You may need to do 30-hour shifts, depending on which hospitals you're in. Even on weekends, you may burn maybe the morning of the weekend just going to see your patients for weekend rounds. If you are working in a very shift-based system like the emergency department, you are going to have to change your sleep cycles quite a bit, especially if you do night shifts quite often, or maybe if you do afternoon shifts which start maybe at like 2 to 3 and then end and end at 11 or maybe up to 2 a.m. in the morning. So you're going to work very weird timings, and your family, your friends need to be able to understand that and support you through that journey. Not to mention training as a junior doctor, you are at a stage where you don't really have that much knowledge, you don't really have that much experience, but at the same time, you're thrown a lot of responsibilities. And you need to know how to tackle those responsibilities in a way that is safe for the patient and safe for yourself. And also, basically don't practice outside of your comfort zone. So there's a lot of balancing acts that you have to do as a doctor, especially as a junior doctor. And that can come across as sometimes draining, especially if you are on, maybe you have burned all your weekends for that month, just doing shifts, doing weekend rounds. And sometimes that can take a toll on your relationships with other people. And so that's something that you need to think about going forward and how you want to manage that conflicts in future.
So thank you, Chak Hon. And I will reply to this about the negative aspects from the way in my mind I categorize them. And of course, I've walked a much longer time as in this journey as a doctor compared to Chak Hon. So Chak Hon, some things are still a bit innocent and naive. So as a senior doctor, the first negative aspect about our work relates to patient care and the nature of doctoring, the nature of the profession itself. Also within the workspace, but not so much patient care, is how work is organized. And then the third category, which is less about patient care, but because of medicine and how it impacts people's lives and the sense of worth, their health, they trigger certain kind of reaction, both in the individual patient as well as the family, that becomes very, very daunting and can be very demoralizing for those of us who are providing care. So the easiest one is what Chak Hon has already referred to. The hospital, the public sector hospital, provides care 24/7, regardless of whether this is Christmas, Deepavali, Chinese New Year. And I chose emergency medicine, so I work shifts. Yesterday, my shift started at 6 p.m. and ended at 11 p.m. officially. I didn't get to leave until 12 midnight. But I don't complain. But for a lot of my family members and friends, they have looked at my whole career and all they remember was Tam Kam Ying is forever missing birthdays and weddings and other family occasions. So to them, okay, my job impacted family life, extended family life, and that is negative because I did lose a lot of the opportunities to catch up with friends and families. So that is about how work is organized. The junior doctors like Chok Hon, when they go on call, they start work easily 7 a.m. They finish a 24-hour cycle. They don't get to go off call until lunchtime, and sometimes with a very, very busy department, they go away from work to go home and rest at about 5 p.m. the next day. So that's 30 hours. That is one negative aspect that unfortunately is part and parcel of how work is organized in healthcare in the public sector. The second negative aspect deals directly with patient care. Again, back to emergency medicine, or even for Chok Hon, where he works in the acute wards. Patients suffering, patients dying. So October last year, there was a massive accident in Ang Mo Kio where the driver of a car had a T-bone collision with another vehicle. His car was totally bashed up, so he was brought into Tan Tock Seng Hospital Emergency Department. I was a senior on shift in there, and taking my team through of young doctors and nurses, you know, that here is a man who is really not going to live for his injuries, and processing those emotions, not during the resuscitation, but thereafter. That is a negative aspect that will take its toll if we don't learn how to take care of ourselves and our team members. And the third kind of negative aspects is, during the acute situation in healthcare, people's reaction gets exaggerated. If you just take a step back and remember, Tan Tock Seng was put on trial by a son who felt that the mother's care in our hospital was not optimal. It was very, during that whole trial, Tan Tock Seng was very frustrated because we knew that as the hospital, we cannot take to social media to justify. So we decided that we would trust the legal system and the judges, and that they will, with due diligence, return to us the fair judgment, which they did. Okay. And even though, you know, we didn't lose the case, we cannot celebrate because it will look so wrong. But if you imagine that that's just one, that's the tip of the iceberg, and there are many individuals like this who in normal times are absolutely reasonable people, but because of the stress of a family member being unwell, their reaction became very extreme. And therefore, that domino effect on all of us who are there doing our job can become very, very daunting and will impact us long-term if we don't take care of ourselves. So these are the key negatives that, you know, I want to share about. I'm now going to switch track back about the question on elective. And I already said we really have a lot of choices. The moment, like Susin, she already said, you know, she's really looking through the whole list, right? And prioritizing, you know, which country, maybe food nice or not, okay? Who else among my classmates are going there? So we have no lack of elective choices in all the major continents. And of course, students' individual consideration actually is the key thing. Okay. I'm going to wrap up, and I'm really very grateful for this last more than an hour of sharing that we have on this live talk. And once again, I want to say thank you to Chok Hon, ex-student and now colleague, as well as Waiter and Shusin, my current students, whom I believe in a few years' time will also become my colleagues as fellow doctors. So the QR code is there. Please scan and give us feedback. If you have more questions, please continue to email to us or use the various social media to send your questions. We definitely will be very happy to hear from you, and we look forward to seeing you in person during all the various open house events that are being lined up. So thank you once again, and we are signing off from the LKC Medicine Live Talk. Thank you.